we're gonna do a Pushin P playlist. Everybody want to lock in on what we're listening to.
We should,
First-
low-key, we should do a Pushin P playlist.
First track, Slump God. Get educated.
Get educated. Learn a little bit about Japan. We haven't recorded in 3 weeks. Obviously,
Yeah.
shows have come out. Movie magic. How do the shows come out? Who knows? It feels like it's gonna knock the dust off, knock the rust off. But are you refreshed from your trip to Japan?
Somewhat. Just gotta make sure I don't speak Japanese accidentally here. Talk Japanese in some convos, I'm sure, but
give me a Japanese phrase right now. No chance.
You know what's funny? I only know 2 words, so it's height. That means yes. And actually, I know 3. Konnichiwa. I think that's hello. And then arigato gozaimasu. If anybody speaks Japanese, I'm sorry. That's the best that I could do.
It's better than I could do. I'm not going to try to repeat it back. Nothing. There's nothing.
I heard. I mean, I learned it from Lupe a while back, but I forgot already. Lupe Fiasco, shout out.
Lupe Fiasco, come on the pod.
2.
Yeah, that's good. Come on the show, Lupe. I know you're a long-time listener. Need you to get on the show.
Kick and push. Kick push
hey.
P. You know.
Hey, let us get the branding for that, sir.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm excited. Been a minute.
Hey.
I love this.
All right, what are we chopping up today? The return show.
The return show. Talking about you. Talking about the origins of Phil. CrossFit era. You know?
Those who know, 1, I love talking about myself. I'm a Leo. 2, those who know CrossFit Phil, love him or you hate him.
All right, we're gonna find out.
Because he's kind of annoying and kind of a douche.
Okay, CP. We're about to get an inside look on CP, the origin of the villain or the hero. I guess.
Depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask, but no, it's gonna be a good topic. I think. We thought about. Actually, for me, I was thinking about like, what was CrossFit Phil like, and how the hell is he so smart now from that background, and smart in the sense of like you're able to speak to literally everything in the field. No cap. The millennial no cap there. No kizzy. You're able to speak to different methods and then have systems in place. And I thought about that. Well, I'm like, how? When he was like big into CrossFit, where that's one of the most dogmatic methods out there, at least from my perception. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about, and our ability to speak to different methods, to understand different methods, to learn the principles of different methods, and how do we get that from a dude who was a douche in CrossFit, you know?
Yeah. No, I love it. And yeah, for those listening, this isn't a critique of CrossFit or a pros and cons. Is CrossFit good or is CrossFit bad? But just like JT said, kind of a walk down memory lane to show how can we take away the valuable things, right? The principles, like JT said, from different methods and pull them all together in our system so that we can truly use everything as a tool. I know we say that all the time. People say that all the time, but I feel like very few people actually do it well within the industry. And even JT and myself, can definitely struggle with it at times, right? It can be challenging, but that's ultimately with the show. That's what we're trying to do, right? To help people think a little bit better, be a little bit more intentional. But before we go too deep into the weeds, you mentioned a little bit of your perception about it being dogmatic, but like first, what do you think about it now? Being a coach in the field for a long time. And then how do you think interacting with other coaches in the field, how do you think they generally perceive CrossFit?
Well, I'll share my perception of what I initially thought of it,
Mm,
which was dumb. It was just a place where people do random things and
yeah.
not have any intelligent um, processes behind the programming, and
Hmm.
you're just getting tired and you're done, just throwing barbells up. That was my initial perception, and then for me, when I thought about that, I'm like, that can't be true. I'm kind of dumb if I think about that. So I actually jumped into a box and like said, "Let me try myself. Let me prove myself wrong," because I try to do that with whatever I think about. So
Yeah.
I went to a box and did a whole month or two. I don't remember how long, but I just couldn't afford it at the time to continue. But it was more for
Expensive
me
though.
just to experiment, right, and
Yeah.
to actually try and then prove myself wrong, like I mentioned. So my perception has definitely changed in the sense of there's a lot of value to it, and that's what I want
Hmm.
to hear more about. What your thought is, knowing that you have a high level experience with it. But currently, it's definitely a place where barbell work was popularized to
Yeah.
our industry, at
Yeah.
least in my opinion, and community, like barbell work, community, and just fun environments. I don't think it
Yeah.
was done as well. Um, I know people have done it for years, but I think
Hmm.
CrossFit really uh, did a good job with owning that, and that's where I think about it now. So I haven't done it since, and that was like maybe 5 6 years ago.
Hmm.
So yeah, I want to hear more about what you think and the misconceptions that you hear or had,
Yeah.
and conceptions. Is that a word? Do you have conceptions about it now?
I don't think that's a word.
All right, never mind.
No, I don't
I'm
think
gonna
that's
make
a
it work.
word. Yeah, you tried, but no. For a second, I thought you said contraception, and I was like, but no. All right. CrossFit. No, yeah, I think generally, I think it's looked at as, like you said, dogmatic, too varied, just random is often like an adjective that gets thrown around a ton, when talking about CrossFit. And I think to a certain extent, like when you look at their methodology, it definitely can be. And obviously, there's aspects that I disagree with now and at the time when I was in the thick of it. But yeah, like the things that you called out, like one thing I constantly hear still to this day from people is that like this notion that CrossFit coaches are bad, and like I I I think it's kind of misguided, right? Like our strength coach is good generally. But I don't know. Like I know a lot of great strength coaches. I also know a lot of bad strength coaches, right?
Right.
I know a lot of incredible CrossFit coaches. I know a lot of terrible CrossFit coaches. So I think it's like anything. Like, is marketing good? I don't like, it's such a general concept that I'd say across the board you're gonna see that standard bell curve of like, you got a handful of bad ones, a lot in the middle, and then a handful at the very, very, very
Yeah.
top. And I think for me, looking back on my career, I was super, super, super lucky to be involved in a lot of great CrossFit gyms that had a lot of great coaching staffs that continuously pushed themselves to get better for their members. And I think one of the things about it, because it is such an inherently complex, training system, right? Like there's something more inherently complex than teaching a bunch of people how to snatch than it is how to do a push up, right? So it's a little bit of a sink or swim situation where you learn how to get really, really, really effective in your communication of complex movements and manage a group of people learning very well. Like, teaching 20 people how to snatch or watching 20 people how to snatch. Like, no, it's a far from ideal scenario.
Right.
1,000%. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I think, talking about some of my biggest growth as a coach came from those rooms, right? From those classes where we got 20 people, everyone's got their own barbell, and we're all snatching, right? We're all clean and jerking. We're all kettlebell swinging, right? And then we're doing it for reps, rounds, right? Like we're doing it under fatigue. Like, how do you help people manage that? So I think with within that, there's just so many. A ton of misconceptions that people have just by having not done it and having not been
Right.
in, you know, that space.
Yeah. Yeah. What were the misconceptions that you had going into it, if any?
Hmm. I think going into, I don't know, I was so young and like as far as like my career goes, like it was like, I'm in college, so just about to start my career is when I first started, training and getting into it. Um, I think honestly, my biggest misconception was that CrossFit got you better at CrossFit, if that makes sense, and I'll unpack it a little bit. Like it does to a certain point, right? I was entering CrossFit with like 275 squat and like, you know, elite level, and I wanted to compete, right? And elite level CrossFit athletes are snatching that. So like doing CrossFit workouts and like they're constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensities, blah blah blah, every single day isn't going to make me strong enough to be able to play the sport, right? You gotta pay to play to a certain window. Like I want to be an NFL linebacker. Well, I'm 5'10", 190, so I can't. You know what I mean? Like I physically cannot do it. So I think that playing football isn't going to make me into a linebacker, right?
Right.
It's a part of it, but there's also other boxes that I really need to check, like having
Mm.
different parents. So I think with CrossFit, it was always marketed and pushed by the people at the top that this is the answer. And I think very quickly good coaches realized, yeah, there's obviously certain standards that you minimally need to have to just be able to compete at a high level. Again, this is not to do it. This is just to compete at a high level. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. So I think it was like, all right, that's where you saw, and had a massive impact on me of people pulling from weightlifting, of people pulling from powerlifting, of people pulling from like super training, right? All these different like sport and strength methodologies to find like, all right, what's the best way to get someone better? Pulling from gymnastics, right? What's the best way to get someone better at squatting, at whatever? What's the fastest way to do this? And then, we talk about hybrid training being super popular right now. It's like CrossFit kind of sowed the seeds for that. Like I remember another misconception, probably the other big misconception was, going through your standard exercise physiology classes, and you're learning about the interference effect. You're everything's very, very siloed and grouped off. And again, I understand why people teach it that way. Because if it was just like, yeah, I don't know, everyone's different, figure it out. Like that's not a helpful way to teach exercise science. So I understand why it's taught the way it's taught.
Mm.
But seeing, like 50 snatches for time or 30 snatches for time, like what the hell? Like what is happening? Like seeing people running and lifting and walking on their hands all in the same workout, like what is this stuff? Like you can look at it one or two ways. You can look at it as like this is like just absolute nonsense and dangerous, which it's not dangerous to a certain extent. Or you can look at it like the human body can do so much cool stuff, right? Like there's so much we don't understand about training.
Sure.
Like how does this work? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is insane. Like what is
Yeah.
happening internally? We don't know, right? Like
Mm.
so I just typically chose to look at it that way.
Mm. When you look at it like that, I'd imagine that's that's the Phil that we know now. Like that's the evolution of him. I would
Yeah.
guess. Was there, because when you mentioned earlier about a bad coach, for me,
Mm.
in my opinion, a bad coach is if they're just dogmatic in their method and they're not open to learning others and they have more answers than questions. I think that's for me,
Mm.
in my opinion. If you don't have a lot more questions than you have answers, then I don't think you'd be doing your clients the service that they deserve. So,
Yeah.
was there a dogmatic feel where there's like,
Oof.
you mentioned asshole, so I want to hear the CP, the dark stories. Like, yo, get out of my face. You snatching or you leaving? Was there a feel like that in there?
Yeah, there definitely was for shoot up until probably about 2 years, probably about 2 or 3 years of time of that. So up until like 2016, 17 ish, right around when I started doing a lot more strength and conditioning, like more closer to doing strength and conditioning full time. Started working with Exos and doing things like that. So like that really helped me like kind of see the world and better organize and you know truly start to pull a bunch of different methods together and create my own philosophy. But like, yeah, there again, it's just like a lot of things are a time and place thing for people. Like CrossFit was the thing that I was decent at. The community really brought me in. Like I felt like I was a member of a really really cool community, a great coaching staff. A lot of my friends were doing it, right? So it just became that thing for me
Sure.
that really stuck from a fitness standpoint. Like it was like the first time I think CrossFit and doing a lot of Olympic lifting too. What was the first time for me where it was like this is what I'm supposed to do, right?
Mm.
Like it was like I feel like this is it, like coaching. That's gonna be my career, kind of thing. And
When you
up until
first
that
got
point,
into it?
yeah. So like
Oh, I see.
first getting into CrossFit and into weightlifting, it was that.
Mm.
Um, and so because of that, it was just I think that further like exacerbated the problem of being super rigid, super dogmatic, and to the point like, hey, if it works for me and it works for this group of people, then this is the way.
Right.
And that's kind of how it was, at the time back across this inception. It was kind of how it was marketed. I'm not going to talk about their founder being. Yeah,
You
we're not
can
going to
you can
really.
Google that.
Yeah, but he stinks. But essentially, like that's how it was marketed. That's how I started, and I get it. Like it gets people on board. It gets people fired up. It
Wait,
gives you that
how was
tribal
it marketed?
mentality.
I'm not familiar.
That like this is the way. Like this is the way to get fit. This is the
What was
best
the
way to
way?
get fit. Just their methodology.
I see.
So just like doing CrossFit
Mm.
was
Now,
kind of how it was pushed.
what was exactly? Do you remember anything about what you were exactly dogmatic about? Like, if we turn back time and I talked to that Phil, like,
Mm.
yo, what do you think about I don't know, animal flow, or what do you think about Seedman's super training book? Are you open to learning about that? What would he say to me? Like, what would be the barriers that you had?
What would I think about Seaman blindfold squatting? Um, no, it would probably be something to the effect of like if it's not like if it wasn't a movement that was either in CrossFit competition regularly or like I could very clearly see the the path to an accessory movement improving a movement that was done in a CrossFit competition, I'd probably say it was like a waste of time or like I wouldn't do it. So like I would never like lunge. I like barely use dumbbells when I first started. I wouldn't do like curls and bench press and things like that until you see it in a competition and it was almost like, oh, okay, cool. I can do that movement now. Right. It was like
Mm,
trying to really abide by like the functional fitness tenets, even though like that's not necessarily what they were saying to do, but
yeah, you kind of
that's
get put into that box, right? Not no
yeah,
pun intended.
it's kind of how it was kind of how for a lot of people it's kind of how it was taken.
Mm. So any movement that was not in the methodology was not part of the
Mm.
methodology. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and again, that's not. I don't think that was their intention. I'm almost certain that wasn't their
Sure.
intention. But like that's for a lot of people is how it was taken. Yeah.
Mm. So
So then
how did
like,
it change?
gosh, I think for me and for probably for some of my clients are just getting stagnant, right? Like I think again, like you can only if you're doing varied stuff all the time, if you're never, you know, basically applying progressive overload, like I think variation is great. But I think there's some things like if you want to gain strength, if you want to gain size, like you have to progressively challenge the system over time to a certain extent if you want to maximize your outcome. So it was learning just generally other people's perspectives. So it was learning a lot more about classic strength conditioning stuff. It was learning a lot more about the principles that underpin, talking about specificity, talking about progressive overload, talking about individualization and a small amount of variation. Like it was learning more of those things that kind of led me to be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like I can't, deadlift once every month and drive up my deadlift in a meaningful way. Like I can be fit for sure, right? But probably lose weight. But I'm not going to get better at deadlifting. So it was learning that and then starting to apply those concepts to what I was doing. So like I was, stuck with my squats. I was stuck with some of the gymnastic skills, like learning, ring muscle ups and handstand walks, like things that I really wanted to do. So now I would just take those general strength and conditioning principles and apply it to that. So I was like, cool, I'm going to train handstand walking twice a week. And what do you know? We got better at it, right? I'm going to do a squat cycle. What do you know? It got better, right? And so I think for me, it was just, that was the learning point. And it's nothing that people hadn't told me before, but I think it's one of those things like sometimes, I think you might have said this on our earlier show, it's the messenger, not the message.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just need to like fail yourself.
Yeah.
To then truly be like, okay, maybe this isn't the right answer.
Right. So the goal, or it came to a point where your goal shifted to how do I get better myself and how do I get my clients better, and the things that you were doing was stagnant or was limiting. It sounded like, right?
Yeah.
And then you just went to learn about different principles, which it sounds like those principles helped CrossFit movements already, or like that's why a lot of the CrossFit movements work. Is there anything else, any other principles that you think about when you're like, I'm talking to Phil now? What were principles that he didn't even know he knew?
Yeah,
Early
I
on.
think the biggest thing, and you've seen, I think, CrossFit Walk, so a lot of other things could run in this regard, but it's community and not neglecting that aspect of it, of training. Right. Like
How do they do it so well?
truly.
I only did it for a month, so I mean, like when you say community, I say community, but like you've been doing it longer to where you know why it works so well with them. What did they do to really put that as a value to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of different like think pieces on what exactly about it makes it so successful, and I think it's just a group of people around a similar age, around a similar socioeconomic status, who just in a similar area, right? Just have a lot of things in common, in your specific area, who all have a common goal, like a very clearly defined common goal, and who are all generally supporting each other. Right. So I think it helps that the task itself is kind of like a fun challenge for people. Like you tend to attract a lot of similar personalities who like to push themselves, who really enjoy that challenge, like physical challenge. So that's probably another part of it as well. But the other side of it's like, generally speaking, like those gyms are always hanging out. They're doing things outside of the gym, right? They're going out to dinners and bars and having parties in the gym and all this stuff. Like, so it truly does feel like a space of like-minded people, again, who have a common goal that they're getting to, and that's like just getting better in their own fitness, right? So it's like, while some people's goal is weight loss, while some people's goal is health, while some people's goal is to compete, it doesn't feel like you have different goals. Like it never really felt like me and someone else in the class had different goals, even if they were on two ends of the spectrum. Because of the nature of the programming and of the group. Like it was like, hey, this workout sucks, it's brutal, we're all going to get through it together. And I think that's that's an underrated thing. Like it keeps people accountable. We had people waking up 5:30 every day for the year, 5 times a week, like getting after it, like doing the grossest workouts first thing in the morning, like kicking off your day. You know what I mean? Like, and that doesn't happen without a community. So I think
Right.
that's an aspect that to this day, like no matter where I'm at, I'm trying to foster that kind of ideology and that kind of mindset within a group of like, hey, we are a team, like we're doing this together, we're getting through this together, like, and then let's chop it up after the workout. Like let's get to actually know each other,
Right.
right? And get to care about each other, and we can really hold each other accountable. So I think that's an aspect that, again, I'm not uncovering new ground here that people haven't talked about before, but I think it's something that just gets so overlooked, especially in like a corporate fitness environment.
Sure. I think it gets overlooked and overvalued at times too. But I want to
Yeah.
dig into more of when you were there. What was there anything that you can recall of like? Because I don't think that community would be created without a good coach, right? And I think
Mm.
everybody would agree with that. But what what were the things that you really did, or a good CrossFit coach does, to really help foster a community of like 20 plus per class?
Yeah. Again, like a lot of it is, I think the price point kind of drove some of this, to be honest. Like a super high price point drove the managers and the coaches to be like, all right, we need to really provide a good ass service, at least the best coaches. So it was like, that was the at a time where I know, obviously I know other coaches were doing it, but people were like, seeing people like really, really, really prep for their sessions like crazy. So like,
How
in
that
the
look?
gym, like 45 minutes to an hour before your session, like designing your warm up and planning your progression and coming up with some cues and thinking about, all right, who's coming to class and what are their limitations? All right, cool. Here's some potential modifications for this lift and this lift and this workout. Here's how we can scale this workout, like setting up the room. And again, I know strength coaches have been doing that for a long, long time, but to my knowledge, in the general population fitness space, that was not really happening.
Yeah.
Right. So, it really was like an elevated, for a lot of coaches, took it to a different level. And again, something that has stayed, throughout my career, of like thinking about it as, how can I create the best experience for this person, right? Or this group, right? So like, one, it's going to be fun. It's going to be engaging. Like we're going to have the music going. We're going to have a good time for sure. But then two, like I'm going to try to keep them in a good spot. I'm going to try to help them learn a movement, right? I'm going to try to make sure they all, get the intention of the workout, right? And I can match the workout to their personal ability level right now. And so that's another piece. It's just like, for me, that was all learned there.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, I mean, like when it comes to community though, specifically, like what would make people go out after and say, let's grab a drink? Because I don't think that stuff. I mean, like you said, strength coaches do it all the time, and it happens all the time. But
Mm.
what would that make somebody want to grab a drink with somebody else? Was there like anything specific where there'd be intentional group stuff, intentional partner stuff, or how would you get people to be friends?
I think it was just kind of the expectation, like, to a certain extent. Like I'm lucky. Like most of the gyms I've been to, like it wasn't like a high school. There weren't like cliques. It was
Yeah,
like, yo, you come to the gym, you're good to go. Like come on through. So as a coach, I mean, obviously you know, I'm learning everyone's name. I'm getting to know them as they come through. But then that's just something that the members would do because someone did that for them.
mm,
You know what I mean? So I don't know where that starts from. Right. Again,
yeah,
is it the like-mindedness? Is it the shared experience? Is it the similarities in
yeah,
in in age and area and interest and all that stuff? Maybe I don't know, but like
yeah,
it really was just like a true paying it forward.
for sure.
Right. And sometimes some of it, I guess, is kind of driven by a coach, because you got 20 people and you're like, yo, JT, you're an OG. You're with the new guy today. Like we're deadlifting. You make sure he doesn't die.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I'm gonna come
yeah,
over obviously and coach him too, but like, yo, you got the new guy.
yeah.
And like, just as you're standing there in between your sets, you're getting to know each other. You're talking through it. That person's helping them out. So I think there's a bit of that as well. Again, just by the
Hmm.
nature of some larger class sizes.
Yeah.
But But where does it actually birth from?
Actually, now that you're talking through it, I think it's a matter of you being a good coach, them being consistent, and now through time,
Yeah,
it's just gonna,
just
you've been to gyms, right? I've been to, I'd go to this commercial gym a lot, and I don't know anybody there, but I know a few guys where now I nod to them because I see them every day,
yeah, 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 yeah,
right?
yeah.
And at some point, like you're just comfortable talking, saying, "Yo, you done with that bench?" because you've seen them every day. So, let alone a class now when you're just doing the similar
Yeah.
workouts, I think the consistency of you as a coach and now the consistency of them just creates a community. I never
Mm,
really thought about it like that. I felt like there was a lot of pressure for me as a coach to make people be friends and like, hey, partner up in groups where I think it's just the consistency of things and
mm.
the natural organic conversation will happen through rest times almost, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really
Mm.
good point.
Program design. I know
Yeah.
that's something I wanted to make sure. Like when you mention all that, you're prepping 45 minutes. Talk about communities, principles
Mm.
of um, training, misconceptions for me of program design. Like I mentioned, was like it's just girls' names with random numbers and then three exercises. You do it fast and you're good. But
I mean,
what's
you're not wrong. You're not
but
like you're
why?
not
Like I don't
wrong.
know anything about it, so I want to hear a better, more intelligent way to really describe that. And then yeah, I can go on,
I mean,
but
the
I don't
the
need to
the
bash.
moniker at least it was constantly varied, constantly movements executed at high intensity. Um, like you're not wrong. It is a bunch of girls' names done for with a bunch of. I mean, the repetitions are random. Like
Oh, they are.
I think there's pros and cons to all of it. Like in thinking through it right now, but like at the biggest level, the way that you are taught, like if you go to like a CrossFit level 1 seminar, like 2 programs, like hey, one day is just a heavy day, so it's like hey, we're just deadlifting today. The next day is a metcon day, and then we'll do some weightlifting, some monostructural, which would be like running, rowing, biking, jump rope, all that stuff is what they call monostructural, and then some gymnastics. So it'd be like we're doing squats and handstand push-ups and rowing, and then the next day, day 3, maybe it's just monostructural. So it is let's go to the track and do some 400-meter repeats. Third day's off. There's always 3 on, 1 off. Again, that's not like that doesn't work, but also there's no scientific rationale as to why it was 3 on, 1 off. It just was. And then you come back and kind of go through that kind of general structure, but it's varied. So again, in the truest sense, you might not see us like you might snatch on Monday and you might not see it again for 3 weeks. And from a general fitness perspective, like, are you not getting in better shape? Like, no, you are, but like it's flying in the face of a lot of things that otherwise would be working for you. Like one of the biggest ones is the repeated bout effect. Like you're seeing stuff like once or twice a month, so every time you work out, you're getting slammed.
Yeah.
Because you're just not adapting to that stimulus. Like there'd be times I remember one time we just ran a 10K. Like just no training. Like my knees have never been the same. Like you just straight up hit a 10K. And then the next day, I think we like one rep max back squat. Now, that was ill advised, I would say, generally speaking. But like, just my body has never been the same physically from that moment, right? And it's just like, yeah, like the human body can do a bunch of cool shit, but that doesn't mean that it should do it like that
Mm.
all the time. So,
Your jerk and never looked the same after
never
that.
look the same.
Wait,
But
so
it's,
with all that being said, what's the principles that you took from it then? If it's all varied and you understand the progressive overload,
yeah.
good guy Phil, what does he say about it now? And what looking back?
Yeah, I think in my opinion the best kind of CrossFit programming looks like just good programming. So it's still progressive, it's intentional. It's balanced in what it's trying to train. Like there's a lot of pros to good CrossFit programming, but I think one of the biggest things, at least principles that I pulled from was the positives of variation,
Which is what?
right? So I think, again, like we exist in this. Everything's just so dichotomous in the industry. Like it's like this super rigid thing where it's freaking starting strength. It's a true linear progression forever, or it's CrossFit where it's like there's so much cool stuff in the middle. So I think like for me, it's letting go and being okay with, just interjecting a little bit more variation, whether it's through my warm up, whether it's, in my plyometrics, whether it's in my accessory work, and through periods, maybe sometimes like during like a off season type of programming that I'll do for myself. It's just like, just going like, let's take 3 weeks to a month off of like really, really hard training. I did this when I first moved to Philly, and it was like training inconsistently. It's like, just go in the gym. And it's like, let's just see where the wind blows today. Like just meaningfully move your body. And like, don't do it at max intent or max effort, but just go meaningfully move your body. And I think for a lot of people that works, certain periods throughout the year. But also understand that people generally like variety. They generally like variation. So it's like, maybe some of my finishers, maybe some of my accessory work, just vary it from week to week. Is it optimal? No. But if it drives consistency, then I don't really care.
Yeah.
So I think
it
that's
sounds
a
like it's
big
just a matter of
piece.
where the variety now plays into your programming, right? As opposed to having a variety or just being a variety type of program versus having variety in your program.
It's still intentional. Yeah, exactly. Are you programming variety, or do you have variety in your program?
That's a bar. Because I think that's for me. I didn't understand the difference before, right? Like it's either one or the other. It has variety, or that's it, or it doesn't. So that I think that's good, because all this stuff, that's what I took from learning more about CrossFit as I went into it. And obviously you've been through the thick of things, but initially what I mentioned, like when I'm thinking about the Phil that I know today, Coach Phil, I see and hear about CrossFit Phil, right? Your dogmatic Phil, where he's just locked into what he does in there, and just not open to learning about other people's opinions or methods. Would you say? I would say you probably have a better lens to help others now. Would you agree of how your thought process has changed with switching from one to the other?
Yeah, I'd say now it's probably just more complete. Like I think there's always gonna be bias. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
I think CrossFit Phil was obviously more biased, right? So CrossFit was the hammer, and I'd be looking at something, I'm like, that might be a nail. Like, yeah, fuck it, and just hit it with a hammer. Like we're just this CrossFit works here, right? So it was actively seeking problems that looked like CrossFit was probably going to be the solution, without necessarily thinking out what truly was. But I think now it's more so like being able to take a little bit more of an unbiased view of someone's problem. Like, all right, truly, what is your goal?
Right.
Like, cool. Is it to be faster on the field? Is it to lose 10 pounds? And it's like, all right, cool. What's your lifestyle like? What's your schedule like? What's your training? Is like, to truly take a more complete look at the person and the problem in front of me, and then be able to look at everything I have at my disposal and say, all right, like this, I'll play this card. Like, this is probably the best starting card, like based on my experience, based on research, based on whatever. And then learn and go from there, and just kind of be able to iterate and see how things work. And that's just generally how I look at program design and coaching now. And I think like it was nothing close to that in the heyday of CrossFit Phil. And I think that comes from being able to take that same view and apply it to different methods.
Right.
Right. Now, like, I'm not, this method is this method is not my identity, even though I love it. It's just a tool for me to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounded like when a client came to you with a problem, or if you had a problem, your first question was, what within CrossFit can I use to solve this problem versus how can I solve this problem?
Right? How can I cross up my way out of this?
Yeah. I think no, that's big because for me, I commend you for switching from the dark side, if you want to call it that, because I never really had a method where I was dogmatic about. So it was just easier for me to not be
There's still
dogmatic
time,
versus,
JT. There's
I
still
mean, I
time.
am. Seaman got me, bro. I'm like, I got my blindfolds ready. Proprioception is is in, you know, all that stuff.
Quick sidebar for those of y'all who have. Joel Seaman posted a video of himself squatting to some pins with blindfold on, and like 7 people sent me that video. So thank you, JT, and
I
thank
already
you,
knew you were
listeners of
gonna.
the show.
I already knew
Thank
you were
you.
gonna get those videos. I'm wondering if there's been memes yet sent of like not reading actual papers and and doing some semen workouts. But
There's got to be.
yeah, we gotta make it. But no, I mean going back, I think like I was not dogmatic about anything, so it was easier for me to ask more questions versus coming from a place of heavy dogmatic type of environment
Yeah.
and culture to now, understanding the principles of other methods. So that's really something I was really curious about. How do you do that? Like it, because we talk about that all the time. Like how do we get coaches
Yeah.
to expand and grow and learn from everybody? Maybe you might not need to learn things from everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of how, right? So, uh, valuable conversation for me to even have to continue to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. And again, it's not always a message. Sometimes it's the messenger. Sometimes it's the package. Sometimes it's the time and the place. Like you are just not ready for that information.
Yeah.
Like it just and that's okay. Like everyone's on kind of on their own journey here as a coach and in the profession and with their own health and wellness. I think if I was to look back and look at some of the biggest influences on me is probably like having a good mentor or coach to kind of force me to see my blind spots a little bit more. And like there was definitely times I was not the perfect mentee, right? Or like, there'd be times where, I was thinking about, Will Hayes when I was in North Carolina. I'd be like, bro, what you're doing is dumb as hell. Like, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. And then I'd be like, I'm not changing this shit. I wrote some fire. And then I would like do it. And then I'd be like, damn it, he was right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I think like,
Sure.
it could even be like a colleague. It doesn't have to be someone like older and wiser than you. It just could be someone else who's got a different opinion. But that stuff, I think is some of the best ways to clearly see those blind spots and then be like, all right, maybe I'm being a
Yeah.
little dogmatic.
No, for sure. And that's something I try to do because I'm not like you. I'm very biased too with a lot of things I think about, but I literally just try to talk to people who are dogmatic, who have different opinions about a lot of things, and that
Mm-hmm.
just helps me have a different perspective because I'm not going to get swayed. It's more like, okay, if you're dogmatic about that, let me just
Yeah.
learn about it. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not gonna save my life, but it's more of like I'm just curious about what your thought is, right?
Yeah.
To get
We're
better
just
as a coach.
seeking to understand.
That's it. Shoot, this is good. As much as I want to take this to a 3 hour Rogan, I know it's not gonna happen right now, but one of these
Could
days I
have.
got you.
No.
So is there play?
You
Is there a lot of play with?
Stop. No, we're shutting it. All right. We're shutting it out. JT,
Oh
let's wrap it up.
man,
Where can people find you?
appreciate you, man. IG CoachJT.mp3 and on Threads. Hit me up there.
The next, I'm about to interview you, Achilles Rehab Journey,
Oh,
the
let's
Rehab
do it.
Diaries.
The Rehab Diaries. The
We'll talk
return.
through it. The
No,
return.
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
The long-awaited return. I'm just picturing the video of you like dribbling a basketball on the court, like super dramatic, like sweeping shots of the court, the facility, and then you just run and like one leg takeoff and like obviously don't dunk. Maybe a sweet layup.
I'll try not to.
But then like you land and you're good to go. You can still hoop.
I think you just
The return.
All right, we're gonna lock it in. Nabil, you saw it. You heard it.
See you in New York.
Let's get it going.
You can find me. You can find me on IG at Nashville. You can find the show on IG and YouTube and Threads at Pushing Performance. I know I said it with a G right there, but there's no G in it. Y'all know that by now, though. If you're rocking with the show, please leave your boys a 5-star rating. Drop us a little review and share with a colleague or a friend that you think could level up. And until next time, I don't know what I'm going to say. So peace.